All right, let's talk about becoming a seriously good Node.js developer. Today, we're going to cut through all the noise and give you a clear, actionable roadmap. No fluff, just the stuff you absolutely need to know to get hired.
So let me ask you something straight up. You've probably gone through the tutorials, maybe you've built a few projects, but are you really ready for a professional job? That's the question we need to answer.
And that's the whole point of this explainer. We're focusing on the skills that employers are actually looking for. If you can confidently check off everything we're about to cover, then you're ready. Simple as that.
So, we've broken this whole roadmap down into 5 key stages. First, we're going to nail down the foundation. Then, we'll use that to build some real applications. After that, we'll add that professional polish that really makes you stand out. Then, we'll get it deployed. And finally, we'll put your skills to the ultimate test. Okay, let's dive in. First up, mastering the core. Seriously, think of this as the laws of physics for the Node.js universe. These are your non-negotiables. You just can't build anything stable or efficient if you don't get these fundamentals right.
Okay, so at the very heart of it all is the event loop, the #1 mistake junior devs make, blocking it with slow code, which just freezes the entire app. You avoid that trap by mastering asynchronous JavaScript, promises and async await. But it's more than that. You've got to know how Node handles modules, how to use core APIs like FS to mess with the file system, how to handle big chunks of data with streams and buffers, and how to do proper error handling so your app doesn't just crash and burn. These are the absolute building blocks.
All right, once you've got those core concepts locked down, it's time to actually build stuff. This section is all about practical application. We're talking about constructing the solid APIs that power pretty much everything, from handling requests with Express all the way to managing data. And, there's a pretty repeatable blueprint for this. First, you lay out the basic structure, using a framework like Express. Next, and this is crucial, you lock it down with authentication. Then, you design a really clean, predictable interface so other people can actually use it. And finally, you hook it up to a database to handle all your data. It's a clear 4-step process every time. Now let's zoom in on something that is absolutely critical: security. Look, authentication is a non-negotiable skill. A pro developer has to understand that dance between access and refresh tokens, know how to store them securely in HTTP-only cookies, and how to set up things like role-based access control to keep sensitive data safe. And when we talk about data, we have to talk about performance. One of the most common mistakes that makes an app painfully slow? Forgetting to add database indexes. The best way to think about an index is it's like the index in the back of a textbook. Without it, you'd have to read every single page to find what you're looking for. It is that important. Okay, so you've built an API that works. Awesome, but now what? This next section is all about leveling up. It's about adding that professional polish that shows you can build apps that aren't just functional, but are also secure, easy to maintain, and super reliable. And that right there, that's the whole ball game. Pretty much anyone can follow a tutorial and get something working. A professional, though? They build it to last, to scale, and to handle all the curveballs the real world is going to throw at it. Okay, the first rule of being a pro developer is so simple. You have to burn this into your brain. Assume every single piece of data coming from a user's browser is trying to break your system. That means every form field, every URL parameter, everything has to be validated and sanitized before you even think about using it.
And rule number 2 is just as critical. Storing passwords as plain text? That's completely unacceptable. There's no excuse. You have to use a strong one-way hashing algorithm like Brickript. Period.
All right, and here's the rest of what's in your pro-level toolkit. For security, you're using libraries like Helmet, you're setting up cores correctly, and you're using rate limiting to stop bad actors. For architecture, you're creating a clean folder structure that makes your code a dream to come back to. For performance, you're using caching to make things faster and logging to figure out what went wrong. And finally, you are writing both unit and integration tests to prove your code actually works. Writing the code is really only half the battle. A true production-grade developer knows how to get that code out into the real world and keep it running for actual users. And that brings us to our 4th section, deployment. One of the biggest traps you can fall into as a learner is just getting totally overwhelmed. So let me give you a key piece of advice. Master the stuff on the left first. Get really, really good at building and deploying a standard REST API with Express and MongoDB.
All that complex enterprise-level stuff like Kubernetes and microservices, that can wait. Get this solid foundation first.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. The core knowledge, the build process, the pro-level polish, and deployment. Now it's time to bring it all home for the final test. This is the ultimate checkpoint for your skills.
So this is it. This is where the rubber meets the road. Ask yourself these 5 questions and be honest. Can you, from a blank screen, build an API and secure it with authentication? Can you protect certain routes based on a user's role? Can you design a database model that's clean and makes sense? Can you handle errors and edge cases gracefully? And finally, can you actually deploy your app and figure out what's wrong when it breaks in production? If your answer to all of those questions is a confident yes, then seriously, congratulations. You've officially moved beyond tutorial land. You have the real, practical, in-demand skills of a production-grade Node.js developer. So let's end with this thought. Look back at the roadmap we just went through. Find that one area where you feel the weakest, and make that your next focus. What is the very next step you're going to take on your journey to becoming truly industry-ready?